Okay. All right. So I do have the recording on here. Let me just switch over to my chat box. Okay. So like I said, hope everybody's having a great day. And as Carrie said, happy Wednesday, everyone. Glad to see you all here on the meeting. We will go ahead and get started. As you can see, we are on week 3 of the remaining 12 weeks. Of course, if you haven't already submitted your tracker, your third tracker will be due today, okay? Now, as you remember, if you do have questions or comments as we go along, you can send a chat or you can unmute your mic. So I'm just going to remove my camera so you can focus on the PowerPoint, and then I will come back during our discussion questions. So what we'll do today is we're going to start off discussing the success of last week's action steps. We will then get to the topic of discussing dietary fats. We'll look at the basic information about dietary fats. Just like we did against carbohydrates or with carbohydrates, we're going to distinguish between those high quality healthy fats versus those low quality unhealthy fats. We will give you the health value of each one of those. And then we will give you the sources of those, all right? And then we will have some information about how to rethink your dietary fats, all right? And then we'll get to our discussion questions. We'll introduce next week's action step or the week's action steps and next week's topic, and then give you just one more quick reminder about next Tuesday's or Wednesday's, excuse me, tracker. All right. The success of last week's assignment was to focus on choosing your carbohydrates wisely. If you do recall with carbohydrates, they are essential for your body. We do need carbohydrates, but we need the right types, we need the right portions, etc., etc. Just a refresher, carbs do occur naturally in all of your plant sources. Also, they occur naturally in your dairy products, but they are also added to processed food in the form of starches and added sugars. Of course, these carbohydrates do vary nutritionally. And we said specifically the healthy carbs, which should really be the focus of your diet in relation to carbohydrates, should be your fruits, your vegetables, your nuts and seeds, your whole grain products, and your low fat and fat free dairy products. Whereas those unhealthy carbohydrates would be things like your cookies, cakes, pies, soft drinks, refined grains like white bread and white rice and white pasta. Also things like, processed refrigerated dough, things like that, frozen pizzas, etc., etc. Okay, so those are the ones that you need to limit in your diet as much as possible. So saying that, we talked about last week as far as your action steps was to swap in those high quality healthy carbs and swap out those low quality unhealthy carbs. All right. So my question is, what swap ins, swap outs did you make with your carbohydrates? All right. What swap ins or swap outs did you make with your carbohydrates? Does anyone want to either through a chat or unmute yourself, maybe tell me maybe a swap in, swap out that you made?
Well, I changed from white bread, which I love,
Okay,
to whole wheat bread, which is
perfect.
a very small thing, but
Yeah, hey, well, Patty, that is a win for sure. And I'm glad you mentioned that. It can be confusing. They do sell uh, wheat bread, so it's packaged as wheat bread, but they also sell whole wheat or whole grain bread. So definitely, like you did, Patty, make sure when you purchase your breads and grains, make sure you always see the word whole on the package, okay? Because that regular wheat bread that does not have the word whole on it can be very deceiving. That's actually considered a refined grain. They just add some extra caramel coloring to it to give it that wheat appearance. So yeah, Patty, so that's a great example of swapping in, swapping out. Anybody else with another example? Yeah, perfect. And Sabrina, that's a great example as well. Swapping in the watermelon, which is a whole fruit, instead of a sweetened treat. Exactly. So that sweetened treat, the calories are going to be high, and there's going to be a lot of those calories that are just empty for you. They'll have a lot of added sugar. Yeah, good example. Anyone else? Okay, and if you are typing that chat and if it pops up, I will grab it. And then related to your action steps from last week, we talked about limiting those added sugars that you can find in, processed foods and beverages. Of course, you can add sugar, table sugar, to foods as well. So you want to limit that. Of course, one way you can limit that is to look at those processed foods and their food label under the added sugar designation. So my question is, and actually, I think Sabrina answered this already. What is an example of how you limited or avoided the added sugar in your diet? Yeah, like I just said earlier, Sabrina, instead of that sweetened treat, she went to the watermelon instead because that's got the natural sugars and the vitamins and minerals. So anybody else with an example of how you limited or avoided added sugars in your diet?
Well, you can limit the harmfulness, I guess, by using Splenda as opposed to regular sugar.
Yes, so yeah, you can use artificial sweeteners, and of course, according to the FDA, artificial sweeteners can be used, but we should always use them in moderation. But yes, that is a great example. Instead of using typical table sugar, maybe use an artificial sweetener. Or you can do a natural sweetener like stevia or something like that. Yep, perfect. Anyone else? Okay. If you're typing a chat, I'll grab it. And let's look at, okay, great. We've got one, some from Sabrina. She does like smoothies, and usually she does add honey or sugar in the raw. I use Swerve. I use Swerve instead. So she usually adds honey or sugar in the raw. And I will say that sugar in the raw is still, even though they like to put that word raw there, uh, it's still a processed product there. It's still a processed product there. It'll cause a big spike in your blood sugar. And I will say, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but honey is still considered an added sugar on a food label, meaning a company, a manufacturer added sugar to a product. So that still is classified under an added sugar category. Now, I will say honey does have a trace amounts of vitamins and minerals as opposed to just table sugar. But yeah, she used Swerve instead as an alternative. Good. All right, and then the last action step was to increase your dietary fiber. Like we said last week, you can always look on a food label because fiber is listed under there. Also, if you're eating a lot of plant sources, you're also getting a lot of fiber. That's why it's always important to eat at least 5 servings a day of fruits and veggies. So my question is, do you have an example of how you actually increased your dietary fiber? For example, maybe you went to the grocery store and you compared some items on the food label and you saw one had a little bit more dietary fiber than the other. Anybody with an example? Or like Patty did, she switched from white bread to whole grain or whole wheat bread, which is going to add some dietary fiber, as opposed to the white bread has zero. Anybody with an example? Okay, good. So Sabrina said she's been eating lentils. I'm glad you said that. Hold on just a moment. Glad you said that. I'm just gonna pop on my camera. So lentils, if you can see those, I don't know if you can, but I have some lentils here. They're very healthy for you. They have four, if you look at the food label on the back, they have 4 grams of dietary fiber. Awesome. Okay. And they have 9 grams of protein. We're going to talk about protein next week. So a great healthy superfood. Okay. Yeah. Chickpeas as well. Chickpeas are awesome. Chickpeas have good dietary fiber, good source of protein. Yeah. So that's a good one as well. All right. Perfect. Well, we will go ahead and move on. So again, as you move forward through the class, last week we started with carbohydrates. So always keep in mind, think about those swap ins and those swap outs. Okay, swap ins and swap outs. All right, so let's get to the topic of the day, which is the basics of dietary fat. Okay, I did have one more chat that came too. Sabrina says she does not like chickpeas, but would hummus count? Yes, hummus does count. Now, hummus is considered a minimally processed food, and the key word there is minimal. Okay, minimal. It means it's been changed from its original state just a little bit. Okay, but yeah, it's a good source as well. I love hummus. And if you've ever been to Israel, I went to Israel last year. It was great. I had hummus for days, and it was really good. So yeah. All right, so I'm gonna remove my camera again. So again, thanks for the chats there. So let's look at the basic information with dietary fats. Dietary fats are essential for the proper functioning of your body. We do need dietary fats in our diet, but we need the right types, we need the right quantities, etc. So we're going to look at that. As far as being essential to your diet, they do provide you with calories or energy. They also support cell growth. They protect your organs. They're very important for the absorption of your fat soluble vitamins, which fat soluble vitamins are vitamins A, D, E, and K. Also, it gives warmth to your body. It supports blood clotting, nervous system function, reproduction, and the immune system. And it plays a vital role in maintaining healthy skin and hair. Whoops. And lastly, there was not a lastly there. These are your basic information on the essentials of dietary fat. So now let's look here is that your fats are found in both plant and animal sources. Now there are 4 major fats that we find in foods. One is what we call saturated fats. You find higher proportions of these in your animal products, and they're usually solid at room temperature. And these are also known as your low quality unhealthy fats. Now, your second major type or classification of fats in foods is what we call trans fats. They are formed artificially during food processing. So you see a word there, that processing. But luckily, these have been banned. Okay. These are known as your very low quality or very unhealthy dietary fats. Now, the third major category or source of fat in foods is monounsaturated fats. All right. And the fourth is your polyunsaturated fats. So you see the keywords there are unsaturated fats. Now, you find higher proportions of these in your plants in your fish, in your shellfish, and these are usually liquid at room temperature. And these two types of fats are known as your high quality healthy fats. Now, all four of these fats, the saturated fats, the trans fats, the mono and the polyunsaturated fats, they do all provide you with the same number of calories per gram, which is actually 9 calories per gram, but they do vary nutritionally. And we're going to look at that on the next slide, okay? And this next slide, and this is similar to what we talked about or how the carbohydrates was set up, we're going to look at the health value of these high quality healthy fats versus the low quality unhealthy fats. On the next slide, we're going to look at the sources of the healthy versus unhealthy fats, okay? So starting over here to the left, and it'll go to the right, with your high quality healthy fats, which is what we call the unsaturated fats. Remember the poly and the monounsaturated fats? These can actually lower your bad LDL cholesterol. That's a good thing. Now, those low quality unhealthy fats, meaning those saturated fats, they can actually raise that bad LDL cholesterol. That's not what we want. Now, with your healthy fats again, those unsaturated fats, they can raise that good HDL cholesterol, whereas those unhealthy saturated fats can actually lower the good HDL cholesterol. Now, with your healthy unsaturated fats, they can fight against chronic inflammation in your body, where those unhealthy saturated fats can actually cause inflammation in your body. The healthy unsaturated fats, they can lower your risk of heart disease and stroke, whereas those unhealthy saturated fats can actually increase your risk of heart disease and stroke. Heart disease and stroke. And as you might know, heart disease is the #1 cause of death in America today, and that's for both men and women. Now, with your unsaturated healthy fats, these can provide essential fats that your body needs but cannot produce it itself. And this is what we call our omega-3s and our omega-6s. So you've probably heard a lot of information touting omega-3s, very healthy for your body. Okay. Now, if you look to the right on the very bottom, it says your low quality, very unhealthy fats. These are your trans fats. We've got some good news here. And that is that in January of 2020, the FDA started requiring food manufacturers or have told them to prohibit adding trans fats to foods and beverages. So that is a super good thing, and it still is required to be listed on food labels. Now, I will tell you, if a food product, which these are processed ones, have 0.5 grams of trans fats or lower, they can actually put it on the label as 0 grams. Okay, so they're still allowed to put less than 0.5 grams, but they are being really prohibited to add more than that. Okay, so that's a super, super good thing. And in trans fats, you typically find those in all your highly processed foods, crackers, cookies, cakes, frozen pies, frozen pizzas, other commercially baked products, refrigerated dough products, etc. Okay, so those highly processed things. But luckily, they have been really prohibited from being added. So again, that is the health value of the healthy unsaturated fats versus the unhealthy saturated fats. So let's look at the sources. Where do we get these? All right. Where do we get these sources of your healthy unsaturated fats versus the unhealthy saturated fats? Well, look over to your left first. Your healthy unsaturated fats, these are typically liquid at room temperature, and they're also found in your plant-based foods and your fish and shellfish. Specifically speaking, it's all of your liquid oils, especially things like olive oil and canola oil. All right. Then you have things like avocados, a great source of healthy fats. Also, nuts and seeds and fish, especially fatty fish like salmon, like tuna, like mackerel, herring, etc. And also a lot of your shellfish. All right. Now, so these are all your healthy fats, which are considered unsaturated. Now, still, when you consume these, it's still important to do so in moderation. Do so in moderation because of the calorie content. If you do recall, like nuts and seeds, um, they can be a lot of calories in a serving. So you really need to portion those out. Same thing with all of your liquid oils, even if it's olive oil or canola oil or avocado oil, etc. They still have a lot of calories in a serving. So it's all about moderation. Okay. But they're super healthy for you. Now, your unhealthy saturated fats, these are the ones that are typically solid at room temperature, and they're mostly found in animal-based foods and tropical oils. So let's look at examples of these unhealthy saturated fats. And this would be things like your beef, your pork, your lamb. So those are all of your red meats. Processed foods, like sausage, bacon, pepperoni, salami, all those different types of processed meats. Also, the skin on chicken. Also, whole fat and 2% reduced fat milk. A bowl of ice cream, butter, lard, Crisco, coconut oil, and palm kernel oil. These are the ones that are considered unhealthy saturated fats. And these are the ones that you want to limit in your diet as much as possible, okay? So does anybody have any questions on the previous slide, the health sources or health value, and then this slide with the sources? Okay. And if you are typing a chat, I'll grab it when it pops up. So now let's look at how to rethink dietary fats. And this does come from the dietary guidelines for Americans. All right, so let's look at that. Number one is to check the label first. Always check the label first on packaged foods, okay? And it says to choose products that are lower in that unhealthy saturated fat, since these types of fats are less healthy. Now, I gave you an example. Let's just say you decide to choose a red meat. You choose, you can have a choice. So I gave you an example of a ribeye, which is 4 ounces, and I gave you a choice of a beef tenderloin, which is 4 ounces. Now, obviously, you can see the big difference in calories, but based on checking the label first, rethinking fats, you can see with that ribeye at 4 ounces has 16 grams of saturated fat. That's 80% of your daily value. Whereas the filet or the beef tenderloin only has 3 grams of saturated fat. That's only 15% of your daily value. So again, you think there, that's about a choice. You can look at the food label and make a huge difference in the saturated fat. The second thing on rethinking fats, it said eat foods with your healthy fats. And it says eat nuts, seeds, fatty fish like tuna, salmon, sardines, mackerel, etc. These foods, as well as your vegetable oils, so your liquid oils like olive and canola, are great sources of these healthy unsaturated fats. Okay, I gave you an example of 4 ounces of salmon. And you can see here on the food label the 2 healthy forms of fat. Now, if you do recall when we did our original Go Healthy class, we said on a food label they are required to put the saturated fat and the trans fats, whereas those 2 healthy fats are voluntary if they want to put on there. But I will tell you, if it's a healthy food product and it has those healthy fats, typically they will tout that by adding it to that label. Now, another way to rethink your fat is limit the saturated fat. Build meals around your protein foods that are naturally low in saturated fat, such as your beans, peas, lentils, nuts and seeds, as well as soy products, skinless chicken, seafood, and lean meat sources. Now, with your meat sources, if you ever see the word loin, Loin, that means lean, like a tender loin, something like that, okay? Now, another thing is to skimp on the solid fats. Remember, solid fats are considered these unhealthy saturated fats. It says solid fats such as butter, shortening, and fat from meats are high in saturated fats. Switch to olive or canola oil for cooking, and then trim the visible solid fat when possible. And two more things, swap the spread. Switch from butter, cream cheese on your toast to maybe a nut butter spread of avocado, squeeze a lemon, uh, one kind of spread that's not as solid, okay? And then last but not least, customize your order. And that's what we talked about in the original Go Healthy about ordering baked or steamed options instead of fried foods, okay? So again, this is about rethinking your rethinking your fats. And again, looking at food labels can be extremely helpful for you. Which now takes us to our discussion questions. We have 3 here, and I'm going to pop back on here. So let's go to this. What high quality healthy fats do you include in your diet? What high quality healthy fats do you include in your diet? Is it like liquid oils like olive oil, canola? Is it nuts? Is it seeds? Is it avocados? Is it fish? Is it seafood? What high quality healthy fats do you include in your diet? You can unmute your mic or you can shoot me a chat.
I include tuna as much as I can. I cook with olive oil or canola oil,
Mm-hmm.
and I love avocados. So I don't
Yeah.
eat them every day, but I try to incorporate 2 or 3 of them a week.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect examples. Canola oil, olive oil, avocados. Yeah, those things. Great. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Patty. All right. And if I see a chat pop up, I will grab it. All right. The second question, what low quality, unhealthy fats do you feel like you need to reduce in your diet? Is it the beef, the pork, the lamb, all of those red meat sources? Do you tend, when you eat chicken, do you eat the skin? Are you eating a lot of processed meats like bacon and sausage, pepperoni, all of those things? Are you eating big bowls of ice cream, solid butter? Are you using Crisco and lard and different things like that? So anything that's unhealthy fat that you feel like you need to reduce in your diet?
I have a question.
Yes.
Um, in thinking about fried chicken,
Mm-hmm.
how if you take the skin off and don't eat the skin of the fried chicken, I mean, I know
Mm-hmm.
it's obviously not going to be as healthy as a baked piece of chicken,
Mm-hmm.
but are you, is it, I mean, are you getting rid of a lot of the bad by taking the skin off and not eating the skin?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you do fry it with the skin on, and if you do remove all the skin, but it's still fried, the calorie content's going to still be a little bit higher because that oil that you cooked it in did absorb into the meat. Yes, it will be better than eating the skin, which has a large percentage of the saturated fat. Plus, when we fry chicken, we put a lot of breading on there as well. So, yeah, it's a better option. So, if you get fried chicken, I know it's hard to not eat the crispy skin, but it would be a better option for you. Good question. Okay, and Sabrina says she's been using avocado oil, olive oil to pan fry chicken for flavor. Yeah, but not a lot. Yeah, you still have to control portion. You don't want to deep fry it in there, really, because it's just going to increase that calorie content like we were talking earlier. She cooks with this chicken skin to add flavor, but not eats the skin. Yeah, and like what we were saying. Perfect. All right, so for the sake of time here, what swaps have you made or are planning to make to reduce those low quality, unhealthy fats in your diet? For example, you're swapping in olive oil, you swap out that solid butter, you swap in baked fish, you swap out fried fish, you swap in maybe vinegar and oil dressing instead of creamy dressing. So anybody want to mention maybe a swap in, swap out that you're planning to make or you already made, which I know Sabrina has already given examples of swapping in different things. Anybody? Yep. So yeah, that's a good one. Kathy said, I know the air fryer is extremely popular. So instead of deep frying, you can air fry something. And she does it with olive oil spray, which is good. And that olive oil spray actually doesn't have the calories. Good. Yeah, the air fryer is a good option. Okay, I know we're 1 minute over. I want to be mindful of your time, so thank y'all for chiming in. Okay, Sabrina, one more here. She loves salad and some salad dressing. She's found a new place, the Mighty Olive, which has a lot of olive oil salad dressing options. Okay, the Mighty Olive, good tip. All right, so thank y'all very much for chiming in, which takes us to the week's action steps, and that is to focus on choosing your dietary fats wisely. Swap in those high quality healthy fats, swapping out those low quality unhealthy fats. And then don't forget about your 5 fundamentals. You can still be using that targeted approach, or you can go an all-in approach. Remember your fundamentals, using the guide to smart food choices, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, at least 64 ounces of water. We're talking about your other food groups, grains, proteins, dairy. Make sure you apply those My Plate tips to help you control the the types and the quantity of those as well. Okay. And then next week, we're going to talk about protein, that last essential nutrient. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the health value and we're going to look at the sources, et cetera. Okay. And then lastly, next Tuesday, like I do each week, I will send everybody the next tracker and you'll submit that on the day of the class. All right. Sorry being over just a few minutes. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we go for the day?
No, but thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. If you ever do have any questions, I think you know where to reach me. You can email me or you can call my office. So we will see you all next time, and hopefully we can have some good examples of those swap ins and swap outs. So thank y'all very much, and y'all have a great day.